Brady, one of the cooler sound bites we heard after this game was from Ernest Jones, which, again, I'm sure you were standing right in front of him when he's speaking with the media. Does this, and you've been around this team for years, does the bond seem any different amongst these players than it's been in years past? I saw this thing, and we'll play this clip from Ernest Jones in a moment, but when I saw it, I was just like, man, I freaking love that. I love that the teammate came to Darnold's defense in that way, and that it was somebody from the defense, and that it was just as genuine and sincere as it seemed to be. And I was like, God, could I picture Richard Sherman doing that for Russell Wilson?
No.
It was just, I don't know. Maybe it happens more often than I'm giving credit for. I just don't see every other team's post-game press conferences. But for those that didn't hear, this was Ernest Jones after the game, talking about Sam Darnold sort of taking the blame for everything that happened there.
I mean, Sam's been balling. Like, if we want to try to define Sam by this game or what, man, Sam's had us in every game. So for him to sit there and say, oh, that's my fault. No, it's not. It was plays that defensively we could have made plays. There were opportunities where we could have got better stops. Yeah, I mean, like, it's football, man. And he's our quarterback. We got his back, and you got anything to say, quite frankly.
I love that. I can't tell you how much I love that. It's one of my all-time favorite sound bites. But what was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, the underrated part of it was that he said that with Bert Kolde, who is basically he's right underneath Jody Allen in terms of the organizational structure. So he's basically part of ownership. So to say that, you don't hear guys drop F-bombs in post-game press conferences very often, and he did it twice. And it wasn't just like he didn't say F off; he said F you, which isn't even even step up in terms of just how ardent the support was. And I think the bigger picture is that this is a very tight team, and that's something that I think was evident to them even back before training camp. And I remember hearing that from people in the building that I talked to, is that they just really felt good about how tight the team was. And I think that was, and I know that was part of the calculus in terms of some moves that they could have made over the offseason. Remember they needed cornerback help, and Jalen Ramsey was available. And part of the reason why they didn't want to bring him in wasn't necessarily about Ramsey the player. It was about that personality and how he is we'll call it a high maintenance kind of guy, right? Yeah. And they felt like they had and still have, but at the time they recognized it then that they had a good thing going chemistry wise, and they didn't want to bring in somebody who might disrupt that. So this is I think the what you heard from Ernest Jones there, I think, is indicative of a very tight locker room, and from the sounds of it, that has been evident to them for quite a while.
Yeah. Does it seem different to you from teams past? Does it stand out in any way, or do you feel like, well, this is kind of a version of what we see most seasons?
Well, some people aren't going to like hearing this, but that's fine. I think one thing, I do think this is a tighter team, because I didn't hear that, what I said that I heard about, how much the Seahawks like the chemistry. Haven't necessarily heard that in recent seasons. And I do think, and I'm not, no one should hear this as me piling on Geno Smith, but that I've said before, and I will say it again, that part of the reason why they moved on from him was because they had questions about his leadership, and his very intense style, it rubbed some guys the wrong way. There's just no way around it. And for as admirable as it was for Geno Smith to stand up in front of reporters every week and say, yep, it's my fault, put it on me, even when times when it clearly wasn't, everybody in the building really respected that. But there was, from what I understand, and this is not just from one person, this is from multiple people, that they didn't always feel like he did that in the moment. And they didn't, the way that he kind of handled adversity in the middle of it, it kind of rubs some people the wrong way. And I think that is maybe one thing that's different between, this Seahawks team and some over the last few years, and you made the joke about Richard Sherman and Russell Wilson. That was probably an even more extreme example. You would not hear Richard Sherman come to Russell Wilson's defense like that. But I think this is even different than it was with Geno Smith last season.
Yeah, Sam Darnold, speaking yesterday with the media, explains in his opinion the unique culture of this Seahawks team.
Yeah, it's not every locker room that's like that. I've been around some really good locker rooms, some locker rooms that, aren't necessarily as close. But I would say this locker room is at the top for sure. Just the way that, everyone comes together, the way that, they, just fight for each other. I think it's very evident with the way that, we play football on Sundays.
I just think, I don't know. If I'm Sam Darnold and hearing that soundbite, I'm going through a wall for these guys. Just not that he wasn't before, but it just I don't know. It just seemed incredibly genuine, sincere, and again that it wasn't. It'd be different if it were one of his receivers on his side of the ball, one of the old linemen, and you're kind of compartmentalized. You guys are on your side of the field, and you're in those meetings together, so they're more likely to say something like that. Having it come from your linebacker, that stood out to me.
Yeah, and especially the way that game went, and going back to the Russell Wilson days. I mean, there were times where that was the source of contention between the defensive players and the offense, is that, when the offense didn't have a great game. I mean, remember that 6-6 tie down in Arizona? The offense might have a game like that. Not that it happened very often, but, they might have a game like that, and the defense would be resentful of Russell Wilson because, the defense is keeping them in games like that. And then, they felt like Russell Wilson wasn't being held accountable the way that they would if they had a game like the offense did. And so my point is that this was the kind of game that, if this was LB era Seahawks, that's the kind of game that might create tension between the offense and defense. And what we hear from Ernest Jones is that it was the exact opposite. And I'll just go back to the idea of how tight they are. I'll kind of take you into the locker room. We're in the locker room 2-3 times a week, and they've got this game. I don't fully understand it. They call it shadow boxing. I don't know if any player who you've had on the show has ever talked about this, but they call it, I think they call it shadow boxing. It's not really shadow boxing, and I don't really understand how it works, and it's not really important. But the point is, you will see guys play this game with each other, and it's not just like the offensive linemen are playing it with other offensive linemen or its position. It's guys from opposite position groups, opposite sides of the ball, and I just haven't really seen that. And I did hear too that that was part of the reason why they didn't make more trades, is that they liked, at the trade deadline, I mean, is that they felt like they had a good thing going chemistry-wise, and they didn't want to disrupt that just for the sake of making a move.